Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's pay homage to our teacher, Pinot Lokusami Mahansi. May he have a long life and may he realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya. Today's Dhamma sermon is conducted because of one family. The family that sponsored this 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗪𝗢 Sadham Deshana is sponsored by Pinmat Mahinda Vimalratna Mahata, as well as his brothers and sisters, as well as his children. So today they want to remember the passing away of their father and to share the merit to that father. So today's sermon, we'd like to discuss a little bit about how to be a good person. Now, normally we think being a good person means making sacrifices. Being a good person means you'll have to suffer. Being a good person means you have to do things that you don't want to do. But in the Buddhist teachings, it's not exactly like that. In order to be happy, the Buddha explains, you need to be a good person. You see, being a good person and being happy go together. The Buddha explains in a beautiful Dhammapada, Dunnigahasalahuno yatta kamani patino chitassa damato sadhu chittang dantang sukhavahang. The Buddha explains, what we need to do is, we need to make sure to tame our minds. We need to blame our minds from time to time, restrict it. Because the reason is our mind seizes, it catches whatever it likes. Isn't that the nature of our mind? We always want to catch whatever we like. Since we were children, we always search for the things we like. But the Buddha says, Chittassa damato sadhu. It's good. Sadhu, it's good to tame your mind. Chittan dantang sukhavahang. Why? Because a tamed mind is what brings happiness. You see, all this time we thought a free mind, if we let our mind run wherever it likes, that's when we'll be happy. Has that brought you happiness so far? Have you been living a life with a tamed mind? Or have you been letting your mind run around everywhere? We let our minds run around everywhere, right? So what has that done for you so far? Have you achieved happiness? No, right? You see, sometimes we might get pleasure from time to time, but that temporary pleasure, that instant gratification, is so temporary, so short. Most of the time, we're not with pleasure. We're dealing with displeasure. And so that's why a wise person lets go of that temporary pleasure and searches for a more stable happiness. That's why we need the Buddhist teachings. Why? Because the Buddha introduces to us a happiness that is not temporary. The pleasure we experience is with suffering. The pleasure we experience with our eyes, with our ears, when we say things, when we go to work, right? All those things are stuck together with suffering. But the happiness the Buddha explains has no suffering. Why? Because when you do good deeds, there's no suffering that follows. The Buddha explains, Mano pubbangama dhamma, mano siddha manomaya. The Buddha, the mind, is the main point. The mind is chief. Manasache paduttena. Bhasitiva karoti. Whatever you do with a badly directed mind, tatonan dukkhamanviti, that'll bring you only suffering. Chakkang mavahato padang. Just like an ox has to pull its cart, a big ox, a big bull, has to pull a heavy cart, just like that wheel follows the foot of the ox, in the same way suffering will follow you if your mind is ill-directed, if you're doing bad things. But if you do good things, the Buddha explains, chayava anapayami. If you do things with a good directed mind, that will bring you happiness just like a never departing shadow. Meaning, happiness is not a barak for you. Happiness is not a weight for you. Happiness follows you like a shadow. But how do you gain happiness? You see, when we go to school, when we work in society, all we've been told is you can gain happiness through material things only. But the Buddha explains, no. When you do good deeds, when you say good things, when you direct your mind properly, when you think beautiful thoughts, thoughts of non-ill will, thoughts of non-cruelty, thoughts away from sensual pleasures, thoughts about renunciation, about practicing the Dhamma, about spirituality, that is what will bring you happiness, just like a never departing shadow. That's why in another verse, the Buddha explains very beautifully. The Buddha explains, Matta sukha parichaga passe che vipulang sukhang chaje matta sukhang dhirang. The Buddha explains, in order to gain a superior happiness, what we need to do is, we need to let go of little happiness in order to gain a bigger happiness. What is that little happiness? Sensual pleasure. What is that bigger happiness? Nibbana. Because Nibbana is the only happiness that the Buddha guaranteed us won't give us suffering. Now, we won't attain Nibbana today or tomorrow, which is fine. All of us, even though we talk about purifying our minds, we talk about being a good person, we're not good all the time, aren't we? So do you feel sad about that? Do you regret about it? You don't need to. Not every monk is pure. Not every lay person is pure. Not everyone is perfect. But what we need to do is we need to take steps. What do we need to do? We need to first take steps in order to purify our minds. If we don't do anything, what happens is our mind is like, it's like a pot. Our mind is like a bronze dish, a bronze pot. And that bronze pot, the Buddha explains, when it gains rust, that's like our mind. If we don't polish it, what will happen? It will get rust, and that rust will eat away your life. So don't let that rust eat away your life. What we need to do is we need to wake up. So here the Buddha explains in a beautiful sermon. I'll explain to you just a small portion of that sutta, of that discourse. The name of this discourse is called Anangana Sutta. It's in the Majjhima Nikaya. And I won't explain a whole lot of details to you, because I know that's difficult. But I'll introduce to you one word that you probably never heard before. This is the new word. Are you listening? This is the new word. The word is called upaklesha. Have you heard that before? Upaklesha. It's a new word. It's a word that the Buddha taught. It might be new for you. Upaklesha means blemish. You know blemishes? You know, we always use a mirror, right? Why do we use a mirror? To see if there's anything dirty in our face. After you go out for dinner, you check whether there's anything in your teeth or not. If there is any spinach in your teeth, what is that? It's a blemish. Sometimes we get pimples on our face. What is that? That's a blemish. So the Buddha explains, in our life, we have blemishes. So the Buddha explains in this sutta What's a blemish called in Pali? Upaklesha. In Sinhala, it's called Upaklesha. So there are 4 types of people in the world. How many? 4 types. The first person has Upaklesha, but they don't know they have Upaklesha. What does that mean? There's a person who has blemishes, but they don't know they have blemishes. The second person is, they have blemishes, but they do know, hey, you know what? I have blemishes. The third person doesn't have blemishes, but they don't know they don't have blemishes. The fourth person doesn't have blemishes, and they know, hey, you know what? I don't have any blemish. So what is this blemish? I believe Moggalana asks, Arhan Sahib, what do you say blemish, blemish? What is blemish? So then he replies, blemish means whenever we have childish desires, the evil things that come to our mind because of the childish desires, that is what blemish means. So aren't there moments where we wish if people could give us attention? That's a blemish. What is that called? That's childish. That's a childish desire. Sometimes we want people to give us attention. That's a childish desire. Lamakai. It's worldly, it's ordinary. So when we get those desires, what happens? Evil things come to our mind because of that desire. Sometimes we have desires, I hope no one notices I made this mistake. I hope no one notices that I have these weaknesses. We don't want to show people our weaknesses. What is that called? A childish desire. What happens when you get that childish desire? Evil states come to your mind. You want to hide that. So when you hide that, what happens? You tell lies. Because you want to hide that, what happens? You might break other precepts. You might even hurt others. What is the reason? What is the problem? Upaklesha, blemish. The Buddha explains the first person, they have a blemish, but they don't know they have a blemish. So what that means is, they have desires. Let's say, for example, the Buddha explains what this upaklesha means. He explains some monks, they make a mistake. So monks have, monks have 227 precepts. So when they break one, they have to tell it to another monk. You know what? I made a mistake. Can you listen to my mistake? And then you have to tell it to another monk. So what happens is, sometimes monks don't want to show that. So then what happens is, they try to cover that mistake. What is that called? Lamak asha, childish desires. And then what happens is, because of that upaklesha, you get bad states in your mind. Or sometimes the Buddha explains, a monk makes a mistake and he thinks, and then someone blames that monk. Hey, why did you do that? Why did you say a lie? You shouldn't do that. Or why did you break that precept? You shouldn't do that. So then this monk thinks, I hope he doesn't advise me in front of others. So don't we have that in our mind? We totally have that in our mind. We think, if my parents advise me, may they not advise me in front of others. If our teacher is going to blame us, I hope it's not going to be in front of my friends. We have those blemishes. That's called a blemish, upaklesha. So the Buddha is explaining 2,600 years ago, monks had those in their mind. And even today, monks have those in their mind. So if monks have such childish desires in their minds, what is more to say about you? We all have these childish desires. That's not the issue. The issue is whether or not we're getting rid of these. That's what this sermon is talking about. A third type of monk is there. He made a mistake. And now he thinks, geez, I hope the person who's going to advise me is a person that's better than me. Meaning what? For example, let's say sometimes parents don't want to get caught doing a mistake from their children. Why? Because that's embarrassing. So what is that desire called? A childish desire. Lamaka asha. So that's called upaklesha. So whether we do an evil, and if someone could be even younger than us, junior to us, someone who might be senior to us, if someone shows us our mistakes, that's good. The Buddha explains, Nidinang vapavatarang yang passi vajjadasinang nigaihavading medaving tadisang panditang bhaje tadisang bhajamanosu seyo hotina papio. The Buddha explains, just as a wise person explains to you whether or not you made a mistake, they don't stay silent. And they do that just like showing you treasure. How do they explain to you the mistakes you've done? Just like someone showing you treasure. So if there's a wise person in your life, and most of the time that could be your mother or father, when they tell you something, hey dua puti, hey son, you might not want to do that. You might not want to associate such and such people. It might bring harm to you. What do we think? Oh, what do you know? Or times have changed. Now it's okay to do such and such things. But if we reject right away what wise people tell us to do, what are we rejecting? Treasure. So the Buddha explains, when wise people tell us something, wise people, okay, not taking advice from anybody, wise, they have to be wise. When someone gives us an advice, don't push them away. Okay, so here it says, sometimes when a wise person gives us an advice, we think, I don't want to hear advice from everybody. This advice should be heard only from someone who's better than me or more popular than me. But if it's someone like smaller than me, I don't want to hear it. But then what happens? This person comes to hear advice from someone junior to them. Then what happens? They get upset, they get jealous, something happens. What is that called? Upaklesha, blemish. So now think, do you have these in your life? The first one was, they try to hide their mistakes. Do you do that? We have upaklesha. Do you wish for people not to advise you when other people are around? Do you wish for advice only when you're in private? That's called upaklesha. Sometimes we think, only the right person should blame me. Not everyone should give me advice. That is childish desires, upaklesha. Sometimes we think, if we know something, if we know some topic, we say, hey, ask me, I know. We want to show off our knowledge. Even in the Buddhist time, sometimes monks thought, I wish this monk, I wish these people will ask from me. I know about this topic, so I can show off my knowledge. What happens? They don't ask that monk, they ask somebody else. And then what happens? Is that monk happy? They're upset. They're jealous. Why did all of that come to be? Because of upaklesha. Now you should understand, for each and every one of these situations, what is needed. What is needed for each of these situations? What is needed is sihiya, mindfulness. You need what is known as sati, mindfulness. You should be aware of what's happening in your mind at that time. If you're with a dull mind, I don't know what's happening. Or if you're just yelling, if you're reacting to every single situation without thinking, what's going to happen? Your anger will stay the same, your jealousy will stay the same, and you won't develop. What happens? Just like that bronze dish gets rust, that bronze dish will meet destruction. So that's why we're learning this, because we hope you don't get distracted. The fifth is, some monks think when they go pindapata, when they go with their bowls and they go to the village to get food, they wish, I want to be in front. Now who could imagine monks would think like that, right? Sometimes this idea comes to that monk. I want to be in front. What is that? Lahamakasha. That's a childish desire, but don't treat it as something small. Do you think you don't have that? You have this. You have it. I have it. We all from time to time have these childish desires. First we need to accept it. Be mindful and accept. I have these upaklesha. I have these blemishes. And the sixth one is, the monk thinks, I want to be the first. I want to sit down in the best seat. What is that called? Upaklesha, blemish. What happens? They don't get the first seat. They don't get the best seat. They get the next best seat. Maybe they get the last seat. Because of that desire, what happens? They get upset or jealous, or some evil states come to them. So this is very important. Is it not? It's extremely important. This is really good for self-development. The seventh point is, the monk thinks, oh, I want to do the Buddha Anumodana, which means after they have their lunch or breakfast, they want to preach after it. I want to be the one to show off my knowledge. What is that called? Lamaka Asha, childish desires. That's called Upaklesha, blemish. Next one is, whenever a newcomer comes, a new monk comes, or a new nun comes, or a new upasaka, upasika, a lay person, male or female, when they come, they want to come and show off their knowledge. Who? A monk. Now think about it. If monks have this, do you think you don't have these weaknesses in your mind? Of course you do. So this monk thinks, I want to show off my knowledge to them. What is that called? Lamaka Asha, childish desires. Do you realize though, did this monk realize that these things are coming to his mind at that point? He doesn't know. He's not mindful. So what ends up happening is, they keep fighting with the world. But really what they need to do is purify their own mind. So now I told you from the beginning, if you purify your mind, if you start trying to be a good person, that's the key to your happiness, key to your success. Now do you understand why that's true? We thought all this time, everyone tells us, if you let your mind run free, run wild, that's how you can be happy. Isn't that how people teach us? Buy whatever you like. If you work hard, you can get as much money as you want. And then you can let your mind run free. You can get whatever you pleasure, whatever you desire. That's how you'll be happy. If you go to Pitert, if you go overseas, that's how you'll be happy. That's what people tell us, because that's how you can market people. That's how you can take advantage of people. That's how you can take from people. But the Buddha doesn't take from people. The Buddha doesn't want anything from you. The Buddha just wants to help you. That's why we call him Mahakarunika. The Buddha is of great compassion, the most compassionate one. Why? Because his Dhamma, his teachings, is all about helping you, not taking from you. So the Buddha never taught about gaining pleasure from material things, even though you can gain pleasure. The Buddha explains, to gain lots of merit so you can live a good life, to have good friends, and to live comfortably. But he didn't just end there. He said to also look beyond the material life and look for spiritual things. So you might be living an ordinary life. You might be asking, hey Swamin Manse, how am I supposed to live a spiritual life? I'm busy. I don't have time to even spend with my children, let alone meditate, right? But you see, the wise, the Buddha explains, who? Only the wise consider spending a little bit of their time for spiritual things. Only the wise. So you have to think, what class am I in? Which type of person am I? So here the Buddha explains, the monk wishes, I want to get as much pirikara, I want to get as much gifts, I want people to worship me. What is that called? Is it fair for a monk to think like that? Here the Buddha explains, no. That is a childish desire. That is lamaka asha. Because of that childish desire, evil states come to their mind. So what is that? What do we call that? Upaklesha. What is it called? Upaklesha. Blemish. Blemish. What is a blemish? It's like a dirty thing, right? If there's dirty stuff on our face, we call it a blemish. If someone, when in their youth, maybe they go to jail, they go to prison for 2 days and then they come out. What happens on their record? They put on their record, or they did some bad things and they were put to jail. So what is that called? A blemish. That's a blemish on their record. That's some sort of dirt, impure thing on their record. In the same way, we have blemishes in our mind. And what is the definition of the blemish? What is the definition of upaklesha? The Buddha himself explains. Upaklesha, blemish, means because of the childish desires in our mind, we want something because of that childish desire. And when that happens, our mind becomes evil. Evil states come to our mind. Why? Because we wish for our mistakes to be hidden. We wish for to receive advice when no one's watching. We wish for a superior person to advise us, not an inferior person. We wish for people to, we want to show off our knowledge. All of these are childish desires. And then bad stuff come to our mind. We want to be in front. We want to be the first in line. We want to sit in the best seat. So tell me, do you think about these things or not when you're working? When you work in a job, in an office, do you not think like this? I want to be the best, I want to show off. When you were in school, did you not think like this? When you're with your wife or husband, do you not think like this? I want them to give me attention. I want them to think of me like this. Are you not like that with your friends? Sometimes people come to the monastery. They want monks. May the monks ask me. I want to be the best daikya. I want to be the best supporter. I want the monks to say my good qualities. Don't things like this exist in life? It happens, right? And then at the very end, the Buddha explains, sometimes monks wish for the best syura, the best robes, the best kuti, the best hut to live in, and all the best medicine. So what are these all? Childish desires. Lamaka asha. Because of that childish desire, greed comes into our mind. Lust comes into our mind. Our mind becomes weak. Because of these childish desires, these low desires, worldly desires. It's like a ledak wage. It's like a wound. It's like a sickness. What happens? It gives an opening to our mind for bad things to come into our mind. What did the Buddha say? When your mind is ill-directed, manasache paduttena, when your mind is ill-directed, what happens? Cakkanga vahatopadang. Just like the wheel that follows behind the ox, suffering follows behind you. What did the Buddha explain? Chittasya dhammato sadhu. When you tame your mind, chittang dantang sukhavaham. When you tame your mind, it will bring you happiness. The Buddha guarantees you. So we need to first have faith in the Buddha's teachings. Why? Buddhoso bhagava buddhaya dhamman desiti. The Buddha realized the truth in his life. Only after realizing the truth, he started teaching others. So what do? We normally teach others before even understanding anything about our own life. Here the Buddha is talking all about fixing ourselves before fixing others. So why is the Buddha worthy? Why is the Buddha's advice worthy more than anybody else? Because he realized the truth and then only then taught to others. Dantoso bhagava dhammataya dhamman desiti. First the Buddha tamed himself. Once he was fully tamed was when he started to tame others by using the Dhamma. Santoso bhagava samataya dhamman desiti. The Buddha first Shantasudapatuna. He became peace. He came to complete peace. Only then did he start preaching others the Dhamma so that they can come to peace too. So here, that's why we need to take this Dhamma with respect. Because the Buddha is completely realized everything and only then did he teach it to others. Okay? So now we understand what a blemish is. So the Buddha explains there are 4 types of people. One person who, let's talk about the first person. They have a upaklesha. Now you know what a blemish is. They have a blemish, but they don't know they have a blemish. What happens? They think, do I have a blemish or not? I don't know. So what do? They don't put in effort to get rid of the blemishes they have. They sometimes think about hiding mistakes. They think about, oh, may these people not blame me. They think of childish desires, but they don't know about it. What happens? They don't put in effort to get rid of those evil, childish desires. You don't get rid of those upaklesha. And then the Buddha gives an example, just like there's a bronze dish. Imagine you get from the store a bronze dish, and then they take it. It's very dirty. Maybe there's some curry stains, maybe leftover paripu on it. Okay, it's very dusty. Okay, so let's say that dusty bronze dish, they put it in a dusty place. What will happen? That dust will just get more. It'll get rusted. Malakada hedena. What happens when it gets rusted? It starts to deteriorate. That metal will rot and it will become useless. Just like that, if you have blemishes in your mind, if you have upaklesha, and if you don't think about it, what happens? Your mind will rot away, just like that bronze dish. Okay? What happens? The Buddha explains. Rage, lust will invade your mind. Dvesha, hatred will invest your mind. Mohe, delusion, confusion. Only those states will increase in your mind if you don't think, if you don't consider whether or not you have blemishes or not. This mind will just get impure and impure. What happens with an impure mind? Brings you suffering. Who taught that? Supreme Buddha. There's another person in the world, number 2. They have upaklesha. They have blemishes. The difference is they know I have blemishes in my mind. That's unfortunate of me. I shouldn't be patient with these blemishes. I should get rid of it as soon as possible. What are they doing? They're putting in effort. How did they get to that point? They were mindful of that upaklesha. They were mindful of that blemish. So now what happens? Just like someone gets a dirty bronze dish. You've seen bronze before? It's a certain metal. It's dusty. But you know what they do? Instead of putting it in a dusty place, they wash it nice and well, dry it, and keep it in a nice place. What happens? That bronze dish doesn't get rotten. In the same way, that person purifies their mind. Why? Because they're mindful. They have upaklesha. Here's number 3. So that's the person you want to be. Out of that first 2 people, who is superior? The second person, the one who's mindful, they have blemishes. The first person, they have blemishes, they're not mindful. They don't care that they have blemishes. They don't know about it. The Buddha explains, the superior person is the second one. The one who knows that they have blemishes, not the first. Number 3. This person doesn't have upaklesha. They don't have blemishes. However, they don't know that they don't have blemishes. So this third person, they don't have blemishes. No problem. They don't have these desires. But they don't understand that they don't have it. So what will happen? Eventually, if they don't protect their mind, if they're not mindful, what happens? Those blemishes might come in the future. Just like, let's say a person gets a bronze dish. Shok, nice bronze dish, very nice. And then they put it in a dusty corner. What will happen to that bronze dish? It will become dirty. It will become rusted. And then it will become impure. So this person, though they don't have blemishes right now, they live unmindful. What will happen? Rage, lust will invade their mind in the future. If they're not careful, hatred will infest their mind. So now do you understand, for each of these situations what you need? Mindfulness. What you need to listen to the Dhamma again and again. Once you listen to a sermon like this, you become aware of your mind. So now I taught you about all these different ways where you have upaklesha, blemishes. Now think in your life, do I have these things or not? Be mindful, or else your mind will just be like that bronze dish. It'll just get rusted and rotten. You have to throw it away. So don't throw away your life. So this third person, even though they don't have upaklesha, they don't have blemishes, what happens? Because they're not mindful, those blemishes come in the future. Number 4, this person does not have upaklesha, and they know, I don't have any upaklesha, I don't have any blemishes. They don't have blemishes, and they know they don't have blemishes. What happens? They're able to protect their mind, restrain their mind, guard their mind. What happens? The Buddha explains, just like a bronze dish someone gets from the new store, bronze dish, there's no dust on it, no blemishes. And they put it in a nice and clean shelf. Clean shelf. What happens to that bronze dish? It will never get rusted, it will never get rotten, it will never deteriorate. It will stay good. In the same way, a person who knows, I don't have any blemishes, sadhu, sadhu, I have no blemishes. That person, their mind, they protect it. And then what happens is, they don't meet with any suffering. So understand, the person who suffers is the person with blemishes. So you should live without any blemishes. That's why we need to understand here. When you live without any blemishes, you don't fight with the world. You can live happily with the world. You can live happily with people. And so this is the sermon. Now do you understand? Think now, think. I'll give you some time to think. Do you have blemishes or not? Do you wish from certain things from your family, from your children? Do you wish attention from them? Or maybe, do you hide your mistakes? Or maybe, do you wish to show off your skills? Or maybe, do you wish to be first? It's okay to have goals, but do you have a childish desire to beat others, to have competitive spirit against others? Do you wish to triumph your enemies, to beat people all the time, to be first in line all the time? Do you have childish desires? Do you wish for always the best? Of course, we all wish the best, but the Buddha explains here, do you expect to have the best thing all the time? If you do understand, you will have blemishes. Blemish means lamaka asha. You will, if you have these childish desires, you will meet with suffering. Do you see how serious this is? So I started this sermon by asking you if you want to be a good person, because being a good person is about getting rid of childish desires. When you get rid of childish desires, that's when you can be happy. Chittasya dhammato sadhu. A tamed mind is good. Sadhu means good. Chittasya means mind. Chittasya dhammato, taming your mind. Sadhu. Chittasya dhammato sadhu. Taming your mind is good. Chittang dantang sukhavahang. Sukhavahang means happy. A tamed mind is what brings happiness. So don't let your mind run around as you please. We always thought all this time, if you let your mind run free, that's how you'll be happy. Now, when you're scrolling on the internet, are you really happy? Or is it just temporary pleasure? Because there's a difference between temporary pleasure and real happiness. Because pleasure is tied with suffering and pain, but happiness is not tied with pleasure, with pain. Happiness is purely happiness. So that's why always seek happiness by doing good deeds. Because tied to that, there is no suffering. Because you might see in your day-to-day lives, whether you're in school, maybe at the workplace, you see people very famous doing wrong things. You see very rich people doing wrong things, lying, deceiving others. And then what happens? We might get tricked. We might think, that's the way to get happiness in life. But understand, we don't have avabodha, we don't have realization about our lives. All we know is about coming into this. We don't know how we came into this world. We don't know where we're going after death. We don't even know what we're doing right now. That's the nature of our life. We have no realization. So we should first become humble. Nihitaman, you should be humble. I don't have a realization of my life. I'm not going to be like an animal. Animals in Africa, they just look to eat and then sleep and reproduce. But our life as a human is much more significant than that. We're not just about eating and sleeping and reproducing. Our life is more special than that. We are gifted with wisdom. So don't get rid of that wisdom. Don't miss this rare opportunity as a human to transform your life, transform your mind into something more. So today we learned this beautiful sermon. It's called Anangana Sutta. It's very beautiful. And so by the power of that merit, we want to share with all of you, by the power of that merit, may you all realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So today, the family that sponsored this Dharma Deshana is from Pinwat Vimlaratna Mahata, as well as his brothers and sisters, as well as his children. And so they really want to dedicate all this merit to their father, their beloved father, who passed away 37 years ago, Pinwat Elric Vimlaratna Mahatma, their father. And also let's first share all this merit towards all the devas. May all the devas rejoice in this merit. Pinwat Sak Devidun, and also the four great king devas, 𝗙𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪 Brahmaraja, as well as Sampath Brahma Raja, the king of Brahmas. Let's share all this merit with all of them. May the devas protect those who sponsored this Dharma Deshana and protect all of you who listen to the Deshana, the sermon today. By the power of this merit, may all the devas realize the Four Noble Truths. All the heavenly beings rejoice in this happiness, in this merit, and may they all realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit towards departed relative Elric Vimlaratna Mahatma, as well as departed mother Soma Vimlaratna, as well as Victor Vimlaratna Mahata, and all departed mothers, fathers, grandparents, any relative from the beginning, throughout samsara. We share merit with all the departed relatives and friends and teachers. By the power of this merit, may they have good food, clothing, water, shelter, association of noble friends. May they live in a good place, and by the power of this merit, may they always have protection from the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and may they escape this long journey of samsara in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit dedicated to all those who helped in making this Dharma Deshana, especially to Pinwat Mahinda Vimlaratna Mahatma, as well as his brothers and sisters and his children, his whole family. Let's share all this merit with all of them. By the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, may Mahinda Vimlaratna Mahata, as well as his children, his family, his relatives, his teachers, and everyone he lives with, may they all have long life, good health, beauty, strength. May the Triple Gem protect them. May their education, the children education, as well as those parents' jobs and careers be successful. May any issues bothering them subside. May they always have good mental happiness and physical happiness. May they be free from any bodily pains and mental pains. And may they too realize the Four Noble Truths, always associate a noble friend, and realize this Dhamma in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share merits towards our teacher Pinwat Lokusami Nwanse, who showed us this Dhamma and showed us how to be a noble friend, as well as all the monks and nuns practicing this Dhamma. May they have long life, good health, strength. May they too realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And let's share all this merit to all those working in Shraddha, who work day and night to make sure all of this production happens. And let's share merit to all those who sponsor Shraddha TV. We don't want to forget their contribution to this whole organization. So we want to share merits with all of them. We want to share our gratitude and respect to all those who make this happen. So by the power of all this merit, may they too realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya.